Welcome to another deep dive.
This time we're taking a look at Elon Musk's recent appearance on the All In podcast.
Okay.
You've provided us with quite a bit of material.
Right.
Looks like Musk covered everything from free speech and government regulations to AI.
Robots and even some behind-the-scenes SNL stories.
Wow.
That's quite the range.
Yeah.
Where should we even begin?
Well, the timing of this interview is interesting in itself.
This was recorded right after the Biden administration announced its second investigation into Musk in just 1 week.
Oh, wow.
And Musk doesn't shy away from controversy.
Not at all.
In fact, he seems to embrace it.
He literally uses an expletive within the first few minutes of the podcast.
He does.
Yeah.
This isn't exactly out of character for Musk, though, is it?
True.
He's known for challenging authority.
Whether it's taking on the SEC,
Feuding with senators on Twitter,
Mhm.
or pushing back against what he sees as government overreach.
right?
What's fascinating is that this confrontational approach
While often perceived as erratic,
has actually been incredibly effective for him.
he's proven his doubters wrong time and again.
Right.
Remember when everyone thought landing the Falcon Heavy was impossible?
Exactly. Or that Tesla would never get the Model 3 out the door.
Yep.
He's pulled it off.
He has?
Though it did take longer than he initially promised.
But now we've got reusable rockets and electric cars are everywhere.
That's right, we do.
And yet we see this interesting dynamic with Musk where he's simultaneously a champion for free speech.
And someone at the center of censorship debates. There are articles out there calling for his arrest over how he's managing X.
What used to be Twitter.
Right? What used to be Twitter.
It's a bit of a paradox.
Musk's stance is that he's simply following the law.
If people want different rules, they should go through the proper channels to change them.
His critics, on the other hand, argue that his control over X gives him a dangerous amount of power.
Over online discourse, and they're concerned about the potential for censorship.
Yeah.
And this is where that situation in Brazil comes into play.
This is where things get really interesting.
As a quick recap for you, Musk pushed back against requests from the Brazilian government.
Believing they were violating free speech laws?
Things escalated to the point where there was talk of him possibly being arrested,
Wow.
which brings up a bigger question.
Are we seeing a global trend towards suppressing dissenting voices under the guise of combating misinformation?
It's not just happening in Brazil.
Remember that case in the UK where teenagers were imprisoned for sharing memes deemed offensive?
Memes. Seriously.
That seems extreme.
It does make you wonder where the line is.
And this is precisely what Musk seems to be highlighting.
Even if we don't always agree with what's being said.
We need to be incredibly careful about setting precedents that could erode free speech.
Oh, and those concerns about censorship and government overreach tie into another major theme from Musk's interview.
His views on government efficiency.
Or rather the lack thereof.
Right.
It's no secret that Musk is not a fan of excessive bureaucracy.
Remember that meme he posted about creating a Department of Governmental Efficiency?
With the ticker symbol DOGE.
Clearly, he sees a lot of room for improvement.
Absolutely. And to understand Musk's perspective,
It helps to look at how he approaches running his own companies.
at Twitter, he implemented what's known as zero-based budgeting.
What exactly does that entail?
Essentially, it means starting from scratch with each budget cycle.
And justifying every single expense.
Every dollar has to be accounted for.
And if a department can't justify its spending, it gets cut.
Wow.
Musk believes this kind of ruthless efficiency could be applied to government as well.
Sounds good on paper.
But could it work in the real world?
Especially when it comes to government.
I mean, there are always concerns about cutting essential services.
Or impacting people's livelihoods.
That's the counter-argument for sure.
But Musk would say we need to take a longer-term view.
Oh, yeah?
He points to examples like East and West Germany.
And North and South Korea.
These were societies with shared histories and cultures.
But radically different approaches to government and economics.
And the results, he argues, speak for themselves.
He has a point.
Look at the economic success of South Korea compared to the struggles of the North.
Exactly.
And while those situations are complex...
And not perfectly comparable to other countries.
Right.
Musk argues that less government intervention
Particularly in areas like regulation.
can create an environment for greater prosperity.
He actually had a pretty memorable analogy.
For how he sees government regulation.
He basically said that the government is like the DMV.
Just on a much larger scale.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I've heard that one.
What was it? He said no garbage collection for outdated regulations.
They just keep piling up year after year.
That was it.
And to illustrate his point,
He brought up the story of SpaceX being fined $140,000 by the EPA for dumping water.
wait, dumping water?
What's wrong with that?
Apparently they were using the water to cool the launch pad.
At Starbase, their facility in Texas.
According to Musk, they didn't have the proper permit.
And that triggered the fine.
He sees this as a prime example of how bureaucratic red tape can stifle innovation and progress.
You know, this conversation about regulations in space exploration
Is a natural segue into another key takeaway from the podcast?
Musk's vision for humanity's future beyond Earth. Let's talk about Mars.
Musk is incredibly ambitious when it comes to space exploration.
And he really sees Starship as the key to making it all happen.
And it's not just about getting to Mars 1.
It's about making space travel more routine and accessible.
More like aviation and less like building a one-time use rocket.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's where Starship's reusability comes in.
Musk wants to create a system where rockets can land and launch again.
Just like airplanes.
This is something he feels very strongly about.
Especially when it comes to the speed of development.
He actually compared the government's slow approval processes
To that hilarious sloth scene from Zootopia.
You know the one.
Yeah, I remember that.
But on a more serious note,
It seems like Musk is concerned that the U.S. government's slow pace.
is putting them at risk of falling behind in the space race.
He does.
And he sees China as a major competitor.
Especially when you compare SpaceX's speed and agility.
With the struggles that traditional aerospace companies like Boeing
Have faced with their Starliner spacecraft.
Musk also attributes SpaceX's rapid progress to the company culture he's fostered.
Very engineering focused.
Right.
Very hands-on.
Huh?
He seems to believe that's a key difference between SpaceX and some of their competitors.
It's interesting, isn't it?
This focus on hands-on engineering leadership seems to be a common thread.
And how Musk approaches all his ventures.
Whether it's SpaceX, Tesla, or even his foray into AI.
Speaking of AI,
That's another area where Musk has some strong opinions.
and bold predictions,
And it seems like he's both excited by the potential of AI.
and a bit wary of the risks.
He is.
He spent quite a bit of time talking about the very specific challenges Tesla is facing,
As they develop their self-driving system.
Right.
Things like real-time image processing.
which is a whole different ballgame compared to something like ChatGPT.
And its language capabilities.
It does make you realize just how complex self-driving technology really is.
What was it Musk said about the Tesla AI chips?
That they're custom designed.
And more advanced than anything else out there.
That's right.
And that they're designed to handle the incredibly complex computations required for real-time driving decisions.
It's fascinating how far ahead Tesla seems to be in this area.
And this all ties back into his vision for Optimus.
Tesla's humanoid robot.
If they can crack the code on AI for self-driving cars.
It's not such a huge leap to imagine that technology being applied to robots.
Right.
And Musk seems to think that robots could eventually outnumber humans.
And even become cheaper than cars.
It's a mind-blowing concept.
And one that raises a lot of questions about the future of work automation.
And what it means to be human in a world increasingly populated by intelligent machines.
It really makes you think.
You know, before we wrap things up,
We have to touch on those behind-the-scenes stories Musk shared about his SNL appearance. Apparently, some of the skits he wanted to do were deemed a little too spicy for network television.
a little too spicy.
Yeah.
Including a Doge father sketch and, well,
Let's just say an incident involving a rooster that might not have been suitable for all audiences.
it sounds like we missed out on some classic Elon Musk humor.
We did.
So to bring this all together,
Musk definitely has a unique and sometimes controversial way of seeing the world.
he clearly sees a future driven by technology.
A future where humanity can reach